Joining me now is Kurt Bardella, publisher of the Watchdog Report on Substack. Kurt, the president made his first formal address to the American people about Iran last Wednesday, on about the fifth week of the war. It seems that the only way Americans are hearing updates from the president are through his social media posts, like the ones this morning. How is this lack of communication impacting the politics surrounding this conflict?
Well, it explains why there are so many in this country who view this conflict as unnecessary, as a drain on our resources, as something that completely defies, really, the platform that Donald Trump ran on in the first place. He was Mr. No More Middle East Wars, no more endless funding, no more endless wars, and yet he has instigated this. And remember, this started just days after the State of the Union address. The president had a massive platform to be able to explain, as all presidents before him have done when starting a military conflict. He could have used the State of the Union to make the case for why there was this imminent threat that we needed to take this action. Why, when he said last year, after the first Iranian strikes, that he had obliterated them, we needed to go back and do it again, he chose not to. And ever since then, there's been no real new information that's been put out by this president to justify the war and to justify the rising cost that we're seeing here at home. I mean, for Mr. America First, what's actually happening is it's Americans who are paying the bill so that we can keep fighting these foreign conflicts and spend massive amounts of money on warfare, on weaponry, on our military resources, and we're just paying more outside of our own pocket here.
And as you said, he didn't lay it out an explanation in the State of the Union address, which was the longest State of the Union address in memory, if not in history. But not only has Trump not sold the Iran war to the American people, he did it without formal congressional authorization. You're familiar with the workings on Capitol Hill. What are the possible consequences of Trump going at it alone? Could he lose the confidence of all, even Republican lawmakers?
Well, and this is the thing, as we head into the November midterms, he is putting Republicans on Capitol Hill in an impossible situation that will cost them dramatically politically. Again, the whole point of going to Congress is so that you have political cover from at least your own party, usually even a bipartisan consensus, to justify the resources that are going to be spent going to war and funding a conflict like that. Instead, he's gone it alone, which means he owns the consequences of it, but also Republicans who seemingly are okay with this president ignoring the other house, ignoring the legislative branch, ignoring the precedent and really the constitutional law of going to Congress to declare war, that they're going to be saddled with this too, because they're letting this happen without putting up any resistance, any fight. They continue these ridiculous squabbles amongst themselves about things like how to fund the government while letting the president run scot-free and then ask them later on for a multi-billion-dollar price tag to fund this war that they've had no role in agreeing to.
Now, you just went there. Unlike the president, Republicans in Congress have races to worry about come November. Trump is now requesting a record-breaking $1.5 trillion budget for the Pentagon, which could slash spending on education, health, research, and environmental programs, heavily impacting matters here at home. What would the political consequences be if Trump does push forward with the spending increase that would show Americans he prioritizes funding a foreign war rather than their domestic needs?
Yeah, Rev, let me tell you something. If we end up in a situation where trillions of dollars are spent funding a foreign war that no one in this country wanted or agreed to, at the expense of things like lowering healthcare costs, at the expense of childcare in America, at the expense of improving our education system, at the expense of making life more affordable, at the expense of making housing more affordable, this November, it's not going to be just a blue wave. It's going to be an extinction-level event for the Republican Party in the House and the Senate.
Now, you've worked in politics for a while. You know the wars can ruin the legacy of your president. Think of George W. Bush and Lyndon B. Johnson. And inversely, opposition to wars can also build campaigns. Think of Obama and even Trump himself. What's your sense of how what's happening in this moment, how it could alter the political landscape for the future?
Well, when we look ahead, and it's just around the corner to 2028, there are obviously a handful of Democrats in the House, the Senate, and governors' mansions who are contemplating running for president and of being the standard bearer for the party. And just as we've seen in the past, whether it was Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, one of the litmus tests in Democratic primaries were, how did you feel? How did you vote on the war in Iraq and Afghanistan? Did you agree with it in the beginning? Did you keep voting to fund it? That was something that came up multiple times in Democratic Party debates. Conversely, for Republicans, whether it's J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio or somebody else in the Republican Party who wants to be the heir apparent to Donald Trump, how this conflict goes, both this one here in Iran, the Middle East, as well as Russia and Ukraine, in my opinion, all of those will be ultimate litmus tests. Because when we talk about the presidency, we oftentimes talk about who do we want to be the commander in chief? Who do we want answering that 3 a.m. phone call that comes in about some conflict abroad? Who do we want to ensure that we are safe here at home? Those issues will be the litmus test for whoever wants to come next in 2028.
Kurt Bardella, thank you for being with us. Up next, the